Hello, everyone. In today's episode, the book we'll be talking about is titled Deconstructing Depth of Knowledge, a Method and Model for Deeper Teaching and Learning. The book delivers professional development activities on effectively using depth of knowledge and much more. We are joined by the author of this book, Erik Francis. He is an international author, educator, and presenter with more than 25 years of experience in education as a classroom teacher, site administrator, education program specialist at a state education agency, and staff development trainer. He is consistently ranked as one of the world's top 30 education professionals by the international research organization Global Guru. Erik, thank you for joining me for this episode.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor and privilege to be here.
Well, I'm excited to interview you. This is a very interesting topic, definitely for education and teaching. So if you can tell us more about Maverick Education and what you've learned as you achieved your goals and with guiding professional development.
I really became very interested in this concept, depth of knowledge, DOK, when I started taking training on the Common Core State Standards. I was very fascinated by it because I always felt there was something that was not very concrete about Bloom's taxonomy verbs, about the cognitive action verbs. And I really liked it that this thing looked beyond the verb, but we were given this graphic that was not accurate. So I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, you keep on telling me it's about what comes after the verb, but this graphic, this DOK wheel has verbs in it. So I did a lot of research on it. I started doing presentations about what depth of knowledge is and explaining it, and then really taking it and making it my own. So that's what kind of Maverick Education has become. It's become this professional development service that I go to schools. I've been to schools around the country. I've been to Singapore. I've been to Malaysia. I've been to Canada. And really working with schools, working with staff, trying to not do the one and done professional developments, but more so establish relationships. I like to say that Maverick Education is kind of the identity of the superhero I have. That's like Batman or Spider-Man. It's where I get to put on my mask and be Maverick Education. But then there's also Erik Francis, and that's, the other side. So it allows me kind of like to separate the professional from the personal. I always wanted to write the book on DOK. I knew that was going to be my second book. I've pitched it around. Solution Tree and I have had a great relationship since I wrote my first book. They have been so welcoming even before I became a Solution Tree author. Claudia Wheatley, just really has become such a colleague and a friend and a champion of my work, and meeting Douglas Reif and him becoming very much a very supporter, not only of me professionally but also personally. And I'll never forget when Jeff Jones, we were at I think it was a Learning Forward conference, and he sat down with me. There was a Solution Tree event, and he goes, "So when are you going to write that book for us?" So when the pandemic hit and my business got pretty much torpedoed, I hit that iceberg known as COVID with my Titanic. I said, you know what, I'm just going to sit down and write the book. And I wrote the pitch and I gave it to Solution Tree. They approved it. I had a fantastic editor, two of them, in Amy Rubenstein and Alyssa Voss down in Australia. And really what I really want to try to do with DOK is depth of knowledge is a concept that was associated with the Common Core State Standards when we transitioned to that. And there's been, for the last 10 years, we've been teaching DOK, but unfortunately we've been teaching it inaccurately and inconsistently based upon what it was originally designed to do. What I wanted to create was a book that not only explained what exactly depth of knowledge is, but also a book that we could use as a resource and tool moving forward after this pandemic. This is really my hope, idea, and vision of what education can become as we get out of this pandemic. And I even said, I don't want this book to come out during the pandemic because people will say, oh, that's so pre-pandemic, or yeah, that would have worked before March 14th, 2020. And but I really focused on that. So that's why I took a lot of time, took a lot of focus. Solution Trees also, their big initiatives are PLC and RTI. So what I did was I wanted to say, how could DOK strengthen and support those initiatives? So I was calling people with expertise in those areas. Tom Herrick, who's been like a mentor to me as a solution tree, what he knows with his expertise with RTI and PLC. Paula Maker, who's an amazing trainer with the at PLC and also the RTI at work. And PLC at work, and really asking them the hard questions about it, and really trying to be creative to say how can DOK not only supplement those processes, but also support the initiatives behind them. And that's what the book became. And also working with assessment, talking to Tom Schimmer, who's another solution tree author. So really, it's kind of like I really see DOK as the missing link. I see it as something that will strengthen and support things that we're looking for in terms of gaps. I believe DOK can be used to basically strengthen and support the PLC process. I turned it into an RTI, multi-tiered system support model in the book. I talk about creating DOK learning targets and success criteria for instruction and assessment. There's a part in the book about how it can be used for gifted education with a thing I created called the GDocs for acceleration enrichments based upon the Renzulli model developed by Joseph Renzulli. I talk about how it can be used for intervention arts and RTI, but also modifications and accommodations for students who are English language learners and exceptional learners, what I call the EDocs, which is actually based upon a 6th level DOK model that was put out that not many people know about. And really taking it and saying, there's a lot of things going on in education. There's a lot of changes, a lot of shifts that have to be made. Hopefully this book will help people make that shift. That is my goal and my dream of this book, is that when people are saying we need to do this, we need to make our teaching and learning not only social emotionally supportive, but also standards-based and student responsive. Read this book. Look at the DOK. It's a different way of thinking. You'll have some cognitive dissonance, but I really believe this could be the answer. And if you're confused, contact me. I mean, I'd be willing to help out and talk to people about how to work through this.
Well, that's what I appreciate about the book, is that it's not just a concept. It's so much more than that. So let's go ahead and get into what the book focuses on. Can you explain what depth of knowledge is in relation to the classroom?
Well, depth of knowledge really is a different, deeper way of looking at the complexity and demand of your academic standards, your curricular activities, and your test items. The thing about depth of knowledge is that it's again putting a different perspective, different spin on it. It's not meant to replace anything. It's meant to strengthen and supplement and support. That's the problem with DOK, how it's been portrayed. It's been portrayed as this new way to do Bloom's taxonomy, which is what we've been using for the last 50 or 60 years to make our learning intention, objectives, and targets for our standards, our activities, and our items. What I've done with it is basically depth of knowledge requires you to ask 2 questions. What exactly and how deeply? What exactly must students learn, and how deeply must they understand and use their learning? It's the next step in unpacking, unwrapping the standards. And I'll tell you right now, when I say that, unpack and unwrap the standards, a lot of teachers roll their eyes and they sigh. I even say in my presentations, okay, voice it, give it to me. Because really what we've been doing, and we haven't really been doing that to the extent we should, unpacking and unwrap the standards traditionally has been circling the verbs, underlining the nouns. Now I know the key concepts and skills. Great. What we don't know is the complexity of the content we're learning, and also the depth and extent of the context in which we must understand and use our learning. So with deconstructing depth of knowledge, what you're doing with is you take your learning intention and you do the traditional unwrapping, unpacking the standards, circle the verbs, underline the nouns. But then what you do is you put that first verb aside and you say, okay, what exactly must students learn? That's the content. Or you can say, what exactly are students thinking about? Then you ask yourself, how deeply must students understand and use their learning? That's the conditions and criteria. So if I said something like, determine a central idea and theme of a text and analyze its development over the course of a text. So I know right now I have 2 verbs. My first verb is determine. My second verb is analyze. I categorize them in Bloom's. Great, put them aside. What exactly am I determining? The central idea and theme of a text. A little bit of complex there, more complex than looking at what is the plot, character, or setting. That's more of a recall. And then I ask myself, how deeply do they have to determine the central idea and theme? The criteria and the conditions is of a text, one text. Now, if I could put two or more texts, that's even making more cognitively demanding. I could put multiple texts written by the same author within the same genre. That's even more demanding. So that's that first objective. And what I did in the book is that I also provided what I call DOK descriptors that talk about and really help you understand the depth of knowledge demanded based upon how you see the demand. So if you're a task-oriented person, you'll use the DOK task descriptors. If you're a mental skills process person, you'll use the DOK skills. If you're more of an outcomes, you use the DOK response descriptors. If you just want to keep it simple and straightforward, you call this thing I call docket. That's the goal and expectation. So I take that first objective and I look at it and I go, okay, what exactly and how deeply? Let's say I'm an outcomes-based person. So I know that determine the central idea and theme of a text, that they have to establish and explain with examples or examine and explain with evidence. So that could be a DOK2 or DOK3. I'd say it's more of a DOK2. That's my opinion. If you said it's a DOK3, great. I expect you to teach at that level. The second objective says analyze its development over the course of the text. So now I know I have two objectives in that standard. So now I take the first verb, analyze, put it aside. I know where it's in blooms. What exactly are they analyzing? The central idea and theme. How deeply? Its development over the course of the text. I know that requires evidentiary thinking, so I'm going to say they have to use complex reasoning supported by evidence, that's the DOK skill, to examine and explain with evidence, that's the response. I know that's a DOK3. Now, because that's a deeper demand, like for the first objective I said DOK2, the second objective I said DOK3, I know that whole standard is a DOK3. I also know on the assessment, it could ask the kids to basically achieve both of those objectives, achieve only one of those objectives, or maybe just say, define what theme and central idea are. That's more of a DOK1. So that's what I'm basically saying in the book is, I know it sounds very complex wording it, and it is complex. DOK is a very, very complex, intricate thing. It's a mind shift. But what I try to do with it is make it simpler by using different descriptors, by breaking it down. And to tell you the truth, the amount of time it would take to do that is comparable to the amount of time it would take for you to make that elaborate activity that never turns out the way you want it to be or plan it to be. And it also makes it more student focused and student centered, because now what you're doing is you're focusing more on the standard than the multiple items that they have to do or even the text they have to use, because I could determine the central idea and theme of green eggs and ham. That means I can do it. I can analyze the development over the course of the text. That means I can do it. I can do it with Charlie Chocolate Factory. I can do it with The Outsiders. If I can't do it with The Scarlet Letter, does that mean I can't do it, or does that mean I just can't do it with Scarlet Letter? See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, so how could you, so it's using that, finding out how you use that strength, using those successes to help them do that. So.
And aside from all of that, actually bringing it before then, like your approach and looking a little back towards how this all started. So in regards to the DOK wheel, now how you had spoken to me about there being a controversy. What is a controversy? And then how you had mentioned particularly why the wheel that was distributed as part of the Common Core state standards might be completely inaccurate.
It is completely inaccurate. Everything about that is completely inaccurate. Let's just even start with the poster of the DOK wheel, which is everywhere. Okay, I mean, basically, it's all over the place. You go on Google, you Google depth of knowledge DOK, you'll find the wheel, you'll find the poster. Go to the citation at the bottom of the poster. There's a URL address there. It'll take you to a dead link. It'll take you to a page at the Wisconsin Center for Education from I think it's the University of Wisconsin at Madison. Now, Norman Webb did work there, but that's not the right URL address for what he called the web alignment tool. Because that's what DOK was originally developed to be. It was developed to be a criterion for alignment studies. It was never meant to be a method and model for deeper teaching and learning. In fact, Norman Webb will still say, don't use this as, that's not what he sees it as. He sees it more as categories. But what we've done with it and what it's been portrayed as is as a method and model. And that's kind of what I turned it into. The other thing about the DOK Wheel is that it credits Dr. Norman Webb, but he didn't develop it. And in fact, he refutes it. And if you go online, he was in an interview with Dr. John Walkup in his blog, Cognitive Rigor to the Core. He refutes the DOK Wheel in that. And he says the only possible use I can see of the wheel is that somebody took a verb and put it in 4 different spokes. Karen Hess, who came up with the concept of cognitive rigor by superimposing Webb's DOK levels with Bloom's taxonomy to create her Hess matrices, she calls it the DOK Wheel of Misfortune. And because it stands in against what DOK is all about, it's about what comes after the verb. Remember, what exactly are we thinking about? How deeply must we understand and use our knowledge and thinking or learning? Now, Karen also speculated in her book, A Local Assessment Toolkit, that the DOK wheel might have been derived from a visual called the Bloom's Hot Wheel. And that's in this book called Growing Up Gifted by Barbara Clark. And I put this in here to make sure I open to the right page. So this is kind of the surprise. So this is the Bloom's Hot Wheel that Barbara Clark created. Notice it has 5 spokes. The only difference between the Hot Wheel and the DOK wheel is that the Hot Wheel has 5 spokes and the DOK wheel has 4. So if you ever thought that DOK was just another way to do Bloom's, the DOK wheel was, you're absolutely right, but it's not depth of knowledge. So the hard battle I've had is really going around and trying to convince people and presenting the evidence to them that this is not accurate. The story behind it is that Norman Webb created DOK as a criterion for alignment studies. So what you would do is you would take your academic standards, you categorize them as a 1, 2, 3, or 4. You would take your assessment items and categorize them as a 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you compare their alignment. Are they fully aligned, acceptably aligned, or insufficiently aligned? Well, Florida was one of the first states to basically do their alignment of their sunshine standards to their FCAT assessments in the 2000s. They didn't use Bloom's, which is what we traditionally do. They use Webb's DOK levels. Some teacher uploaded that graphic to the internet. And people just said, okay, this is DOK. Now, in 2009, when the Common Core standards were developed and was going around to be adopted and implemented, what happened with the standards that were described as the rigor of these standards, the cognitive rigor, they took a lot of Karen Hess's work based on that, is determined based upon the level of thinking students must demonstrate as designated by Bloom's taxonomy. And we have a ton of graphics. This Bloom's wheel we have pyramids and all these different things, steps for Bloom's taxonomy. And the depth of knowledge demanded according to Webb's DOK levels. There was no graphic. So when the federal government came in and said, this is a great idea, we support it, we're going to give you a grant for Race to the Top, one of the things that they recommended was if there's a state who developed the training on the standards, share it with the other states so everything's consistent. So there was a certain state, I'm not going to name who, that was very much behind the development not only of the curriculum for the Common Core standards, but also the training materials. Well, they did a Google search for this DOK wheel, for this DOK, for a graphic, found the wheel, figured it came from Florida, it must be true, okay? And they made that poster. And they put that citation there. And they also produced the video. It's still on YouTube. You can find it. And I found out the video was written by Karen Hess, but they talked about the DOK wheel in it. And Karen said that, that's not accurate. And the attitude was, too late, we produced the video. So this video comes out, this thing comes out, 45 states adopt and implement the Common Core state standards. And one of the recommendations, like I said, was to save money and for consistency, share the wealth. So 45 states said, does anyone have a training on DOK? This state that I'm not going to name said yes, and they gave it to all 45 states. And the training of the Common Core Standards was a train to train model. So you go and get your training, and then you bring it back to your staff, and you got these materials. And part of it was that DOK Wheel. So everybody said, okay, this must be accurate because it was part of the straight training materials. Why would they give us an inaccurate document? But I was sitting there in that training. It was about 2012. I was sitting in there at training, and I got it when I was working at the State Department, and then I got it when I started becoming Maverick. When I became Maverick Education, I was going to be a Common Core trainer, and I kept on hearing, DOK is about what comes after the verb. What comes after the verb? And I raised my hand. This thing's full of verbs. Well, yes, but it comes after the verb. Yeah, this thing's about verbs. It's full of verbs. Try to do the Jedi mind trick. These aren't the droids you're looking for, And I just really became really passionate to find out the truth about it. Had the pleasure of presenting with Karen Hess at a conference in Santa Clara, California. Took her out to dinner. It was a great dinner. To me, it was like talking to Benjamin Bloom saying, how'd you come up with the taxonomy? And she was asking me, so how do you become a professional development specialist? And she has been. And she wrote the foreword for the book. And I'm very, very honored and very, very pleased. And thank you, Karen, for doing that. Learn more about it. I got to talk to Dr. Norman Webb, who told me the story of how he started seeing this in Florida. He doesn't support it. He doesn't endorse it. He didn't create it. So what I did with it was that I kind of took my PD to explain what it was and then turned it into something that I felt could be applicable and usable. So I'm going to say this right now, and actually I did say this to Dr. Norman Webb. I said, this is a monster, okay? If you think about the fictional thing of characterization of a monster, that DOK is a monster, and the only way you you make something not a monster is, number one, you tell people what it really is and why it's not a monster, or two, you tame the monster to make it do what you want it to do. Right. Now, the thing about DOK is that there's a lot of people who have different perspectives on it, and we can all agree to disagree. But what DOK, the thing is that we all need to agree upon, what we all do agree upon, is that DOK is not based upon the verb, it's based upon what comes after the verb. If you talk to all the different people out there who talk about DOK, Dr. Webb, Dr. Hess, me, there's a couple other people out there, that we all agree upon that. But how we do it and how we use it, that's where we get to be creative as educators. So I turned it into a method of model teaching and learning. I turned it into that multi-tiered system of support. I believe it can be used to supplement it. And that's something that basically, what the book is. This is my creative idea about how the DOK wheels can not only be used accurately and appropriately, but also be used authentically and also be accessed in all different areas. So that was really my passion with it.
That's so interesting. And it really, it just mind boggles me to hear that it just came from somewhere, and there is no recollection of where that somewhere is, but it's still being utilized. And now you have to kind of reteach that something, or kind of take it out of what's already being used.
And that's the hard part, because and this is the thing, actually, even before I wrote the book. So I uploaded a lot of stuff I thought about with DOK and put it out there for free for the internet, because I'm up against this free document. I mean, you don't have to pay. You have to buy my book to really understand what depth of knowledge is. But it's also great that Solution Tree put out some really great free resources so you can get it, and you can get that at the website. But you're up against something that's free versus something that is, you have to buy the book for and understand it and take some time. So that's the hard part. I have an image in my presentation where it's a snapshot from The Walking Dead. And it was from an episode where Rick Grimes is running to the fence in Alexandria, and he's got all these walkers around them, and they're going like this. Well, what I did in this image is I put the DOK poster in the Wheel of the Zombies, and it's a still image, and I have like a cartoon bubble that screams the DOK Wheel is inaccurate. That's what I feel like. I have to say that because, people of a certain age, there was a movie called Soylent Green with Charlton Heston, and he says Soylent Green is people, and not many people realize that. Or an old Twilight Zone episode where they meet these aliens, and they said we translated their document. It's a cookbook. That's what it kind of feels like. So, let's just not even like think about why it's inaccurate. Let's move forward. Okay. We've been doing this inaccurately for the last 10 years. I'm going to put it out there. We've been doing this inaccurately for the last 10 years. Yeah, but it worked. Okay, you know what? It worked for the last 10 years. We're at a time of great change in education. Okay. Tom Herrick, again, one of my biggest influences and mentors, says the school that we worked at in March of 14th of 2020 is gone. That school doesn't exist anymore. Now we have this post-pandemic school. The kids that we're teaching are like no other kids we've ever taught in history. The only type of kids really we can say are similar are the kids who grew up during the Great Depression. So, and what did that generation become? What we call the greatest generation. This is the greatest time for us to basically reset and reboot the matrix. Okay? Not the Hess matrix, the Neo Trinity matrix. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. This is a great time in education to reset. And it's so funny because education right now, we're knuckling. We don't want to let go. We're still doing standardized assessments during a pandemic. Really? It's bad enough we treat standardized assessments like, and the state assessments, how we hold schools accountable. It's bad enough we treat it like a sports mentality. I'm an Arizona Cardinals fan. I'm out here in Arizona. What do you remember? The great season they just had, or that they didn't make it to the Super Bowl? Do you remember the year that the Patriots went 19, or do you remember the one where they lost to Eli Manning and the Giants? Okay, that's what we're doing. And that's how we've treated assessments. It doesn't matter how you did all season or all academic year or the growth. It all boils down to that one day, the Super Bowl, or the best of series of 7. And now we're asking them to basically play sports during a natural hazard, a pandemic. Okay? We really need to take back, and we really need to basically, reboot, okay, and reset. And what I tell teachers is that the change in education is not going to come from the federal or state departments of education. It's not even going to come from your district offices. It's going to come from you as a teacher, okay? For too long, we've been transplanting trees and planting them. We need to be acorns. We need to basically have trees grow from seeds. And what happens to a tree? It grows and then it branches out. Okay? Be that change maker. Okay? Think about what worked, but also think about what didn't. Embrace the change. And I know it's hard to hear right now, but this is the best time in which we can do it, because really there's rewards in this risks, because there's no research that supports how you teach kids during a pandemic. I looked. I can't find anything from 1918. That's the last one. Okay? But now's the time to get really, really engaging. Now's the time to get experimental. Everything's a hypothesis. DOK works. It's effective. We haven't been doing it accurately or appropriately. Now it's time to make that shift. This is the moment.
That's perfect. That's really good. Absolutely. So let's talk about chapter 9. Why did you make it kind of adapting to TV shows in terms of explaining or facilitating the delivery of DOK?
With Let's Make a DOK, it was more so I just wanted to make, this thing is so complex and it is so intricate and it's such a mind shift. How can we make this where it's accessible? So at DOK 1, your students are just game show contestants. Okay? At a DOK 2, the student becomes a teacher, the Padawans become the Jedis. And I show Luke Skywalker with Yoda, and then I show, because he was a student then, and Yoda was the master. And then in The Last Jedi, Luke became the master and Rey became the student. So Luke went from being the student to the Jedi, telling her how and why the Force can be used, okay? In DOK 3, it's one or two things. You're playing the Hunger Games. And basically, what's the answer to the Hunger Games? Survive. Now think strategically, how could you do it in this time frame? Or you're running for office, you're running for president, and you're in a presidential debate. And at DOK 4, and you can tell from my background, I'm very much into like pop culture, sci-fi, Star Wars, Marvel Cinematic Universe, DC. Back there you see Thanos' glove. In fact, why don't I just get it? Is that, how can you take this your infinity gauntlet, okay, and snap your fingers and use your knowledge and skills to change the universe.
Mm.
Okay, so that's what I say a DOK for is we're asking us all to put on our infinity gauntlets and take our knowledge and skills to address, explain, or respond to a real world scenario situation or to demonstrate our deeper expertise in something. See, if you think about Avengers Infinity War, the problem was this. Thanos said there's too many people in the universe. What if I just get this, I snap my fingers, and I just randomly go and basically have these people disappear? That's a DOK 4. Okay. When Tony Stark says, how do I get them back? Was, well, what if I invented time travel and I do this and I bring it back and I just snap you out of existence, Thanos? That's the thing. DOK 4, I tell the kids, it's time to put on your infinity gauntlets. How do you go and basically change the universe with your knowledge? And more importantly, how can we educators put on our affinity gauntlets and snap that DOK wheel out of existence? And that's actually something I show in my training too. When after I show the wheel from this book, and I show them side by side, and I said, "This is why we need to do this." I have a video of Tony Stark snapping his fingers, and it goes white with the Infinity Gauntlet, and then the DOK wheel disappears, and everyone's like, "Oh, wow, okay, I get that." So that's the thing. So when you ask me about my trainings and stuff, that's how I try to make it as as familiar yet as focused as possible. And that's the thing is that really trying to make it where, I mean, I can talk very academic, but I also can be very, very approachable with it. And that's how I try to do this with DOK is that it is very complex and it really takes a lot of time and thought. Being DOK itself is like a DOK 3 or DOK 4. Okay. But how could I make that accessible to you? What could I do with my training to make you feel like that you walked away with something? You didn't have to agree with everything, but if you walked away with one thing, that's great. And if you can make it your own, that's even better. So,
That makes a lot of sense. Now, not trying to play devil's advocate, it probably isn't, but about the students and everything you just said, and then bringing technology that is just like warped in their life. There's now that I hear there's tablets in kindergarten's hands in the way that they learn. How are they going to, how can depth of knowledge evolve with the way that students retain information and then actually having to comprehend it? Does technology factor in that? Is that bad or good?
technology is a tool, all
Mhm.
right? And it's how you wield that tool. Okay. I mean, a tool can be something that's assistive and a tool can be something that's destructive.
Right.
So it's really, you can't rely on the tool. You need to rely on yourself. Okay. You need to say, here's this tool, here's this resource. Okay. This is what you can use to do this. Technology is not going to make us smarter. Technology is going to make us go further. Okay.
Mhm.
There's still that humanistic element of it. We need to have a natural innate curiosity. We need to go and actively learn. During the pandemic, we were all given our tablets. We were all given these devices. We all have access to it. But we were given a Tesla, and the unfortunate thing is, and sometimes we drove it like a Ford Edsel. And and a lot of that comes from our fear, that, oh my gosh, if we just set them loose, who knows what they're going to bring in? Okay, well, who knows what they're going to bring in? But we as educators can help guide and support them with that. The thing about technology with our kids, it's almost like a Aldous Huxley Brave New World situation. Like everyone talks about 1984 about, suppressing information. Brave New World was all about putting so much out there that we don't know what the truth is. These kids know the technology, but they don't understand how and why they can use that technology or what else can they do with that technology. They're all on TikTok doing these videos. They're all, it used to be YouTube. It used to be, back in the day, I mean, Facebook is now pretty much like the way MySpace was, for this
Mhm.
generation. But they don't understand the power of what they can do with that. And that's the thing is that what can we do with that technology? The thing I say about technology is that technology made the answers free.
Mhm.
Okay. Back in the day, we had to go to school to learn. We learned from our elders, we learned from our parents. when I grew up, teaching was this. You do it this way. Okay, here's the worksheet, here's the test. Did you do it the way I taught you? Yes. Okay, good. A for achievement and A in conduct. Why? Because you listened to me. All right. Now all of a sudden, answers come free. The world's at our fingertips. I mean, you can do anything and get the answers of anything on this or on this computer. What this can't do is help us think critically and creatively about how and why we can use those answers, or think critically and creatively whether those answers are valid or invalid. That's the whole thing behind the DOK wheel. Okay, just because it was on the internet doesn't mean it was true. That's how we got it. Someone did a Google search. Oh, there's this wheel. Well, it came from Florida. Well, Florida, one of their governors was behind the Common Core State Standards, so it must be accurate. They've been using it. It must be accurate. Think critically. Ask the kids. That's the other thing we need to do. We need to start asking kids and having them draw their own conclusions. If it's something we may not agree with, that's fine. Ask them, why do you think that way? Guide them to really reflect upon your thinking. It's kind of like we're not living in a world where now we can say like this, you're wrong. Because wrong now means your perspective differs from mine. There's 3 ways to answer what I say is a good question, which my other book is. Correctly, incorrectly, and those you can defend and explain, justify, and support with examples and evidence. So if I think this and I can produce this examples and evidence of it and say this is why it is right or this is why it's wrong, then that's the critical thinking. It's not a matter of what is 2 plus 2. It's 4. I could do that on this. Remember that multiplication problem I told you? You know what it is? The answer is 500. The answer to 542 times 398 is 215,716. How do I know that? You're like, are you imagining she did in my head? No, I did it on my calculator. Okay? But how can I use multiplication to find products like that? That's where the deeper thinking is. So explaining you that one way, I can stack factors. I can go and do the Windows method. I can use lattice. I can use the stick method that's come out of Asia. Now, here's me as a teacher. I can teach you 4 out of 5 of those methods. Okay? One of them I can't. I can't do that stick method. But what if that was the way that kid learns? Okay? What if that's the way that student learns? I'm not going to teach it because traditionally we do 2 things. What if I said we do 2 things? We teach the way we were taught and we teach what we understand. But this is a generation, when you talk about technology, where they learn from video. I learned this from my daughter, my youngest daughter, Avery. She said, Dad, I want to take guitar lessons. Cool. I know Monty at Monty's Music, pay him, $80 a week. He'll give you, Dad, I'm going to go on YouTube. I'm relearning how to play guitar on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's the way this generation is. We need to embrace the technology, but we can't depend upon the technology. Because if an EMP came through the world and there was no technology, we still got to learn.
Mm-hmm.
We need to basically tap into that natural curiosity. What is 2 plus 2? Doesn't matter. It's 4. Good. Answer's correct. I'll give you a C. How can addition be used to find the sum of 2 numbers? I'll give you 2. 2 plus 2. You give me 2. You give me 2. How can you find addition? DOK 3. How could addition and rounding be used to prove that 2 plus 2 could equal 5? I gave you the answer. 2 plus 2 could equal 5. You have to tell me how addition and rounding could do that. Somebody tried to do that to me and embarrass me at a PD with that. And I said, could I say, what is 2 plus 2? And someone said 5. I said, what do you mean? And she said, 2 plus 2 could equal 5. And she made me do it. What's 2.4 rounded? 2. What's 2.3 rounded? 2. What's 2.4 plus 2.3? 4.7. Now rounded. 5. She goes, see? Now, she wanted to embarrass me, but I'm like, wow, what lets me do that? You know what she said to me? Triangles. So I learned something new. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
DOK 4. What else could you do with addition, or how else could you use addition to address, explain, and respond to a real world scenario situation? I don't know. I don't expect you to. I'm just asking you that. What do you like? Football. Okay, how can you use addition to find out how much points that they score with each field goal and each touchdown? Now I'm using that. See what I mean? So DOK 4, that's what that is. So with the technology, embrace it, but don't depend upon it. Computers are not going to save the world. People are.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. And yes, I agree. I agree 100% on that. Even though I know there's like so much complexity with depth of knowledge, I really do appreciate everything that's in the book. And I just can't wait until you come up with the next one. And like you said, the trilogy as well. But so far, just for now, thank you so much for this interview that you've been with us. I appreciate just the thought provoking and engaging conversation about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and I want to take a shout out and really thank Solution Tree. Everyone there, from Jeff Jones to Douglas Reif and Claudia Wheatley, and my editors, Amy Rubenstein and Alyssa Voss and Sarah Payne Mills and Chic Love over in marketing and Alex over in PD. I mean, I feel like I'm doing an Oscar speech, but you guys really have made me feel valuable as a practitioner and as an author. And I mean, I stand with such pride and say with such pride that I'm a Solution Tree author. And they really, really have made what's been a passion project of mine a reality. So I just want to take a moment to give them a good shout out and thank you. And thank you, Prisma, for, I know you're starting this, and I'm glad to be one of your first interviews. So thank you for this opportunity as well.
Add this book as another tool for your toolbox with teaching. It's not only engaging, but it also provides reproducible tools for creating a depth of knowledge teaching and learning plan. This book is available on the Solution Tree website, solutiontree.com. Look for Deconstructing Depth of Knowledge. At Solution Tree, we share your vision to transform education to ensure learning for all, and we can help you make this vision a reality. No other professional learning company provides our unique blend of research-based, results-driven services that improve learning outcomes for students. Thank you for tuning in. Navigate to our page at solutiontree.com/podcast. Thank you for joining us.